So, any heads up, Kelsey, if you're available. I may ask Mayor Kelsey Collier-Wise to do a quick introduction of our panel and panelists today, if you'd be so kind.
Absolutely.
And then probably, do we have enough training?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
All right, Mayor Kelsey Collier-Wise, everybody.
So our program today has been shifted a number of times, and I think I got the email from myself yesterday and was like, oh, that's us. So today we're going to be doing a little bit of a state of the city with some of your city council folks. We've got myself, we've got city council president Rich Holland, city council vice president Steve Ward, and central ward representative councilperson Katherine Price. And so if you guys all want to come up here, we'll switch together. We don't necessarily have a presentation put together. Well, I guess Rich does, but I thought we would just talk a little bit maybe about some of the things that have been going on in the last year, and then just open it up for questions and discussion with us if you have questions or discussions. So, Rich, it looks like you actually have a sort of an agenda, so why don't you start? I like that.
Is this on? Okay.
I don't know. Yes.
Up is on. Okay. Yeah, I have to have a list like this, and you can't see it, but my name's up here, so I remember that. So, okay, just I'm trying to generally cover what happened last year and the beginning of this year. And the first thing I've noticed from the emails I get from Peer is that almost all the legislation, close to 90%, is about marijuana. So it's tough because they're going through all these regulations, all these things, and I guess a year and a half ago, they said to the cities, you figure out what you want and tell us. And so we did, and we told them, and now they're telling us what we really want. So it's I feel like a wasted effort almost. Anyway, as we continue on, COVID is still an issue, still continues. I'm really hoping this year ends it, but we don't know for sure. Good news is Streetscape is done. I asked to make sure, check with Jose. It's done. The only thing is we haven't paid one of the bills, or they haven't paid one of the bills, but that's not our problem. Streetscape itself is done, and I think it's beautiful. I really like it. We had some zoning issues corrected every time, well, I think it was 2012, if I remember right, when we really made a major change to the zoning laws, or rules to set them up, and we made a few mistakes. And so we've corrected, I think most of them. We had a big one this time about where to put grain silos under what zoning condition. I tend to go to as many planning and zoning meetings as possible because they are a very vital part of our city. The Law Enforcement Center, just as of yesterday, they accepted the committee's suggestion, and the land is now picked. Is going to be at Stanford and Cherry. It's 7.4 acres, $1.29 million, and it was a mixed vote by the Clay County commissioners, some wanting to expand it to 10 acres for additional money. But this is just step one. We've got this resolved. We're going to do that. The next part now is the design. And while I really felt that we didn't need to buy extra land for extra money that we didn't really have a use for, I would reverse that thing and say, now that we have it settled, I want us not to be frugal on how we build it, the law enforcement facility. We've got a plan for the future. We've got to do a good job. And just the 911 area, for instance, the computers went from 1 when they first started to 4 per desk now. So it's going to expand. We need to make sure that we accommodate for that over the future years. So I want to be frugal on our land, but really not be frugal on how we build the building. So phase 2 of Bliss Point. This started last year, and we did some changes to promote, or hopefully promote, more affordable housing. There's subtle things, a couple lots smaller and stuff like that, but I hope it is a benefit, and it's going well. The vast cable franchise agreement, so after all these many years of just Midco, we now have VAST coming in, so we'll have a choice. And we're going through with that. That was last year. There's a slight chance, I say slight chance, because it isn't done yet, but it's a good chance that we'll actually complete the bike path. after only 22 years, no, 12 years, 12 years. 12
I think we
years
should
worth.
say 22. That sounds right.
And it just popped up, it's ugly, feathered. Pardon?
It's, the mic is on.
I'm sorry, I know I have a soft voice. I'm afraid if I get any closer, I'll swallow it. I hate to tell you guys this, but the chickens are back. Yeah, they're back on the agenda. It seems to happen about every 3 years that people would like to have, in some respects, many of them say rightfully so, farm animal chickens back in Vermillion. I know when we first went through this, and I went to a state meeting of all the council people of all the state and laughed and said, we're worried about chickens. I found out it's a very common thing. Every city goes through, should we have chickens or not? And almost all of them continue to argue it forever. So it's back. I personally hope we allow chickens. I think it's fine, but we'll see. I'd like to point out something I observed. I didn't count or something like that, or keep a record, but I think last year and the beginning of this year, I've seen more public input to things. The people coming forward and saying, we like this or we don't like this, or bringing concerns. That's wonderful. I really encourage it, and I'm really happy to see the public come out and say, give me their opinion, both through my email and at our meetings. It's wonderful, and I'm very thankful that we have such an alert community. Let's see. Highway 50 is completed, about that. And to the casual observer, you'd say, so what? The street looks better, but the gutter doesn't look a darn bit better. It's going to have tulips growing back. What you can't see is the big sewer line underneath of it that gets the water off quickly. So I think it's going to be a really dramatic improvement, and I'm glad to see it. The last thing I'd like to recognize, and it's always sad things happen, we lost a very good lawyer in John last year. And I was sorry to see his passing. We're going off from there. His group will carry on. But he was a great advantage to our city for many years. That's what I have.
All right. Thank you, Rich. And you actually covered a lot, including some things that I probably would have forgotten. So I guess just a couple of things that I would touch on that I think were real successes of the last year. I think it got through COVID from a budget standpoint much better than what my fear was when we first started out, as far as the hit that it took to sales tax, to our bed, board, and booze. We've really recovered well. We've definitely had a lot of help through like the American Rescue Plan and the CARES Act to help supplement some of those things. And our staff was incredible at kind of figuring out where to plug in those federal funds to do the most, to make the biggest impact as far as making sure that we didn't have to cut positions and we didn't have to cut back on projects. And so I think that we can be really proud of that. Our census numbers, I think, are another huge success where I was very afraid that it was going to be sort of a disaster. As you remember, the COVID hit right in the middle of, we were just like kicking off our census efforts in Vermilion, and especially trying to target students who then didn't come back for like 6 months. And so, the fact that we grew to 11,695, I think is fantastic, and I think we are actually bigger than that, but that at least shows some growth. You also will notice that our poverty rate compared to that 2010 number has gone down considerably, and so I think that there's a lot of community leaders that can take credit for that and the work that was done in trying to address that issue, in trying to work on things like affordable housing and higher paying jobs, industry mix. All of those things are really important to have a vibrant community. So it's still too high. It's still quite high for the state, but it's dropped about 10% since the last census. So I think we've got a lot to be proud of there. Streetscape, as Rich mentioned, I think is a tremendous success, not only in the way that it turned out, but budgetarily. Again, I think we were afraid that things with the way that a lot of materials and construction costs were across the country, that this could have been an over budget project, and it actually came in under what we were thinking it would. And so that was really exciting, even with change orders. I've gotten so much amazing feedback from people about it, especially people from outside of the community who come and visit and comment on it. One thing that I found super gratifying was when they had the kind of goodbye party for Steve Miller, and there was a representative that was talking about his work with the Native community, specifically pointed out the choice to include the Wasay Wakpa, label on the big signs coming into downtown Vermillion as a signal to the community that we are a diverse community and we recognize the land that we're on, and that meant a lot to me, and to know that that was something that had come up, in that community, that was noted and appreciated. So I think we've got a lot to be proud of. We've still, of course, got a lot of work to do. We, like everywhere, are facing some workforce shortage issues. There's a lot of open positions. We're kind of constantly hiring, especially for our police force. So if you've ever considered a career in law enforcement, please talk to me. I would love to speak to you about it. Maybe it's a post-retirement thing you would like to do. I don't know. I mean, we're open to anything. No, we have 5 open positions in the PD right now, and we do interviews. Lately, almost every other week we have interviews. So we're really working on that. So those are probably some of the bigger challenges, but I think, compared to where we were now about 2 years ago and where I was kind of afraid we would be, I think that our city has come through in really amazing ways, and I think huge credit goes to our city staff. I can't tell you how lucky we are to have John, to have had Mike, and then his replacement, Katie, when he retired. We just have, and of course Jim, as Rich mentioned, we have really great people guiding us through some pretty challenging times.
Are we all supposed to say something?
If you've got anything to say, if there's anything we missed.
I mean, one of the things that is important to me is promoting Vermilion as a arts and culture destination community, and I know we've had, COVID hit that hard. A lot of our big events we had to cancel, and like the Shakespeare Festival had to get canceled in 2020. And so I'm really excited that if COVID winds down, that we can really get back to building our reputation as that. That's always my focus.
Absolutely.
You're supposed to say something else, Steve.
I don't have really much to add. I will say that the census number, I think, is really important. We haven't grown to that rate in a very long time. Very long, like 50 years. So that's big. One of the goals when I first ran for city council, which was a long time ago now, as it turns out, was to increase the population to attract people to the town beyond the university. And I think this council, under Jack's leadership and under Kelsey's leadership and with our staff, has focused on that goal, and we're seeing the fruits of that labor and that focus. So I hope that continues, and I hope that we can continue to attract all ranges of income so that we continue to diversify our economy, which, as Kelsey pointed out, is difficult right now because of the labor force issues, but we need to be mindful of it all the time. And it's not always stuff that city council does, but we can often grease the skids for the VCDC or businesses to help us in that regard.
Kelsey, if I can expand on something you said, talking about the law enforcement and the need for additional people, USD is expanding their education, and they would like to have it so that they could expand and teach law enforcement and go right into an internship. And Matt said, if they did that, and we are going to do it, Right now, he couldn't accept anybody. He doesn't have a chair space for anybody, or the places, or really the facilities to do that. So they're really looking forward to the new courthouse and the new enforcement facility.
Not new courthouse.
Not new courthouse, excuse me, expanded, better courthouse, yeah. But that's not part of this issue at all. This is just the enforcement facility. And they're looking forward for the rooms, for the places where they can do the internships, because it would help out everybody.
Yeah, there's been a lot of really good cooperation both between UPD and VPD, but also with the Criminal Justice Department. Tom Morozla, who's a professor in criminal justice, did get a very large grant that's focused on this kind of law enforcement education piece. And he works really closely with our captain, Chad Pasek, on those issues. And they literally meet every week and talk about how can we get students to consider law enforcement as a career, that how do we get people who wouldn't normally see themselves as police officers to consider it? So it's an exciting time to see those collaborations. All right, Greg.
Kelsey, does the city council support the board of commissioners proposal for the LEC?
Well, since it just happened yesterday, we have not seen it or heard about it or discussed it at all. So we don't know what exactly had happened yet. This is literally, I just found out that it had been passed this morning, so I don't know enough to be able to comment, and certainly couldn't speak for the rest of the council. But Rich is our representative to that committee, so.
Myself and Howard and this next meeting, our noon meeting, will have Steve Weller there, and he will talk about it and recommend it, and not recommend it, but talk about it. And of course, Howard and I were on the board with that, and we will certainly recommend approval. And it's a smart council, they'll approve.
Certainly, I think the council very much recognizes the need for new or expanded law enforcement facilities. I don't think there's anybody who questions that. There's nobody who questions that the jail is in dire shape. I mean, honestly, our current jail is unconstitutional. It's concerning, and I don't think anybody denies that. But we haven't seen the plan, so I can't really comment on it. Ted?
It seems likely that there will have to be a general obligation bond approved to build the public safety center at $26 million, something in that order. If so, will that be on the ballot in June? And the city will have to pay its share of the bond redemption.
That would be a county issue, and I really don't know. I wish I had a commissioner here that could comment on the specifics, but it would be a county bond.
It is a county issue, and their goal is to get on the June ballot. We've got a ways to go. We've only passed step one, and basically step one, we had a block diagram what it's going to look like, but none of the details. They've been well thought out and worked over and over and over again by both police departments. But we have that step to go through, proposed building, and then we'll have some idea of how big the bond should be. We don't know at this point, Ted, the number. But yes, the goal is to try to get on the June ballot.
And I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but the up next this morning was Andy Howe and Matt Betson and Steve Waller, and that was recorded, and I think it's on Facebook Live. So probably there's a lot more information on that. I just hadn't had an opportunity to watch it yet. So I bet a lot of questions are answered in that, I would assume.
I was there, and yes, it's a good hour-long discussion. That's where I obtained the information about the USD and police department cooperation for internship. It's worth watching.
Yes.
So maybe the city council doesn't know this, but I'm assuming since we're going to be co-located, the VPD and the sheriff's department, the city will have some sort of financial stake in this and have to contribute funds.
Yeah.
Why is the city not more involved in this? Because it feels like the county's in the driver's seat and say, here's your share of the check, city of Vermillion.
Well, that's one of the reasons why Rich and Howard were part of the committee this time around. We didn't have that the last time, and so we didn't always feel like we were getting timely updates. And so it's really been helpful to have them at the table to be able to tell us kind of what's going on. Ultimately, you know, the last time when they were looking at the entire courthouse, our portion, if you look at courthouse and law enforcement center and everything, our portion was, I think, about 16%. So, I mean, we really do not, although we are a piece of it, we're a very small piece of it. And when you think about the jail, especially being the bulk of this space, that is a county entity, you know, and so our piece just isn't a large part. And, you know, whenever you have multiple layers of government trying to work together, you know, there's got to be somebody ultimately that is leading the way. And at the end of the day, if they built this and they had the jail and they put the sheriff's department there and we decided it wasn't a good fit for us, we could decide not to be a part of it. Now, I could not imagine why we would do that. It would make no sense. But really, this is their property at the end of the day, and the bulk of the space is going to be taken up by the county.
And I just would like a brief comment is I do think that as somebody, some people might know of where I was on this, the previous issue, I'm in support of based on what I'm hearing now, and which is still not much because I don't think there's been as much. I think they've made a good steps. I still think there's a lot to be done to get the community on board with this, but I do think this, to me, it's just strange that the city council would not be more active and asking more questions before basically now it's going to be put on the ballot. Like, at what point is the city council going to basically be a representative of the city of Vermillion and the residents of Vermillion? Yes, we're also residents of Clay County, but I would like to see a bit more, not like nonchalance of, well, this is a good thing, but a little bit asking more detailed questions.
Well, and that's,
it's great that
we
Rich
have
and Howard are on the committee, and that's an improvement. But I also that would just be my comment, is I would like to see more, and more using also the city council resources and education to help say that this is where the city's coming from as well on this.
So the schedule is that this is going to be presented to us on Monday. So, I mean, it's a few days away. The county just heard the proposal yesterday, and then it's coming to us on Monday. So, I mean, you're talking about a difference of 6 days. So I don't feel like we're so behind the ball. We're just in front of you, like, literally right after they made their decision. So, you know, again, communication between the entities can be difficult. I feel like this process went a lot better than the last one as far as that. But, you know, we are not in a position to be able to tell them what they can and can't do either. I would say one of the things that is important to me that I feel like has come up a lot, and I want to encourage everyone, is that if you live in the city of Vermillion, you are a Clay County resident. The county commission represents you. In fact, they mostly represent you. So oftentimes I feel like people who live inside city limits come to us and they don't have those same conversations with their county commissioners because there's almost a feeling of that the county only represents outside of our borders, and that's absolutely not true. They are responsible to you, and you have every right to ask them questions. I feel like the last time around, perfectly honestly, like I was getting more questions about the courthouse than some county commissioners were. And I was like, I don't do anything with the courthouse. I have nothing to do with it. They've never talked to me. They didn't ask me. And you should talk to them, you know? And I'm not trying to abdicate responsibility, but I also think that we as citizens of Clay County need to be more responsive to our county commission and ask the same from them.
Couldn't hear Rich at the beginning, but I thought he said something about a bike path. Did you?
Yes, so the bike path has been a long time issue. If you remember, we had a great bike path. There was a flood, it fell into the river, it stayed there, and then we were trying to figure out how do you rebuild a bike path that won't just also immediately fall into the river again. because you don't want to just keep building things that keep falling into the river. So there was a number of things to figure out how to reroute that in a way that wouldn't fall into the river again. We had a fairly good plan. There were some issues as far as like negotiating with landowners, because there's a lot of privately owned land along that area. But the main issue that we have had as far as a delay has been working with the Department of Transportation, which was the main funder of this bike path. They told us, you have to fix the bike path or we're gonna take back the money that we gave you. And then we said, okay, how is this plan? And then we basically waited for an answer for 2 years where we couldn't do anything because they didn't get back to us. So that has been really the delay, is working with Pier. But things are looking good, and we have a plan, and we're gonna move forward with a rerouted bike path that will not fall into the river.
How about bike paths north of us here, or bypass?
At this point, we don't have further construction planned. We do have a bike master plan, which is on the city website. I also have a hard copy, and I think there's hard copies at City Hall if you want to look at it, that we got funded also by the Department of Transportation. And that is a plan that essentially lays out where we will add bike infrastructure as other infrastructure is improved. And that does include extensions of the bike path more on the north side of town, but it isn't scheduled at this point. It's just sort of the hope, I guess, of what we will do eventually when there would be funding for it.
If memory serves me right, Kevin Collier, one day raised enough money to build the initial part of the bike path by advertising on the radio. And it sure would be nice, Mary and I ride the bike path all the time. And it sure would be nice if the one on the north side came around and connected. And I've been talking to John almost since he's been here about flooding the river. And every year I get a non-answer.
Well, we were waiting for an answer from the state for quite a while, and essentially just had to sit on the plan until we got that. There's a lot of really awesome projects that I would love to see happen. Funding is always an issue. I have to give major credit to staff. They are always looking for grants and opportunities to be able to do those things. Our Parks and Rec department and Jose, our city engineer, is always looking for those opportunities for funding. Sometimes we get them, sometimes we don't. We previously had gotten turned down for a faster electric charging station grant, and now we just got one, so we're gonna be getting a faster electric charging station. So, just because we don't have the funding now doesn't mean that we won't in the future, and I know that staff is constantly looking for those opportunities. Yeah, she's super responsive to me, you can imagine. Definitely returning my calls, no. Sue?
What do you see as looking forward 5 years, what would you see as major issues or things that you would like to see accomplished in the next 5 years?
Steve, how about, we'll make this our last go-around since we're getting close to one.
Well, I think we can always expand parks and recreation opportunities. I think, I can't, right off the top of my head, recall things we have on our 5-year plan, John, that are more exciting than improving wastewater treatment and things like that. But those are, those are, we have infrastructure things that are mainly on our agenda that are expensive in the long run. And, but for things that we could see, I think the city's always looking for Parks and Rec stuff, and to try and help businesses come in that will attract labor that is not university labor. Am I missing something real obvious?
No, I wanted to give everybody a
Yeah.
chance.
This is where I have to say
Yeah.
something. I mean, I think this, I mean, it took up the majority of the conversation today, but it's important, I think it's important to everybody on the city council to keep the co-location between the sheriff's office and the city police. And because it's so mutually beneficial for those entities. And when you talk about us, being an active part in that conversation, even though we're such a small percentage of that conversation, I think that's a really important issue that we're gonna be facing in the next 5 years, is trying to stay active in that conversation and make sure that we can keep those entities connected as the plans for the law enforcement center go forward.
I would say the biggest challenges facing us right now continue to be affordable housing. It's huge. I think we've made a lot of strides. We have, Bliss Point Phase 2. We've got the several income-based housing developments over on the east side of town that have been built, and those do make a big difference. Bliss Point doesn't necessarily provide what I would call affordable housing, but it does create more of a market and more of a mix, which moves, the market and enables more people to get into perhaps affordable homes that have then been vacated. But we still have a lot of work to do. I kind of talked about this before Christmas when I was giving you guys the United Way update. We had we were inundated with homeless folks this year. I mean, just a lot of people struggling with housing. And so from that end to people who want to live here to work but can't find an affordable home because there's so few on the market, we know that there's a lot of work to do on that. And then I would also say, as the conversation today, I think our communication and relationship with the county is something that I really want to be able to focus on. I think it's something that needs work, and I think there's a lot of folks on the commission that are ready to do that work, and certainly the council is ready to do that work, because if you have the Venn diagram of Clay County and Vermilion, it's like this, it's almost a complete overlap. And so we need to be able to work together smoothly the way we do with so many of our other partners. So those would be my two big things, I think. And chickens.
And chickens. Can I say one more thing?
Yes.
And if it's like a pie in the sky thing, so.
I love pies in the sky.
Well, there's pies
I love
over
pies.
there. So if COVID's over, and the streetscape is done, I have this dream of what I'm calling a Celebrextravagapalooza, like a downtown thing with bands and like everybody get downtown and celebrate the end of COVID and the new streetscape. That's like, I've been talking about the Celebrextravagapalooza for a couple of years.
Yeah, basically since the beginning of COVID, yeah. So look for your invitation.
I'll make mine quick but brief. We just recently annexed some more land, so we have more heavy industry area. But what my goal would be, and I'd like to see, and we'll work towards, is we still have a lot of open land right inside the city. I think we should fill that with appropriate affordable housing, regular housing, and industry where appropriate. But we've got a lot of land inside. We don't need to grow outside the area, which I'm not opposed to, but we fill our land inside first, get it taken care of. And a quick answer to your question, the city is responsible for our sheriff's department and half of 911. So the new building, that's what we're absolutely responsible for. But both police departments are going to share evidence rooms, investigation rooms, and everything else they can share, and that's a great thing.
All right, thank you guys so much for your time and attention.